Salzburg Cathedral's interior was famously described by Mozart himself as a place of immense musical and visual gravity. Yet for Shirley Conan, visiting in May 1967, the Baroque mastery felt so fresh it was as if the paintings were finished just yesterday. That sense of immediate, vibrant history is the heartbeat of her travel journal, which captures a specific window of European discovery during the late 60s. We aren't just looking at an itinerary here, we're stepping into the shoes of a woman who was navigating narrow streets too tight for a Volkswagen, seeking out mountain views above the clouds, and ending her days with white wine and the sound of an orchestra playing Hello, Dolly in the Austrian Heights.
It is such a vivid time capsule. Shirley was traveling during Whit Sunday, or Pfingsten, which is a massive holiday in Austria. It explains why the city was so alive and packed with locals on holiday alongside her. When she mentions walking through streets too narrow for cars, even the iconic VW bugs of the era, she's describing the Getreidegasse and the surrounding medieval heart of Salzburg. That area was designed long before the internal combustion engine, and she really leans into that old-world contrast.
The detail about the cathedral paintings looking new is actually historically grounded. The cathedral had suffered significant damage during a bombing raid in 1944, particularly to its central dome. The restoration was only completed in 1959, so when Shirley walked in during 1967, the newness she felt was the result of a massive, meticulous post-war reconstruction effort. She was seeing the Baroque splendor of Santino Solari's 17th-century design through the lens of very recent craftsmanship.
And she moves from that high art straight to the ground-level experience at Hotel Pitter. This is a legendary spot, now known as the Imlauer Hotel Pitter. It has been a cornerstone of Salzburg hospitality since the 1860s. Shirley mentions having sauerkraut there, which sounds like a simple detail, but in that region, it's often served as part of a Schlachtplat or paired with local sausages. It's the ultimate comfort food for a long day of walking.
She and her companion Ted weren't just sticking to the tourist trail either. They headed to the local part, walking mountain paths toward the Leopoldskron Schloss. That palace is famous now as a filming location for The Sound of Music, which had been released only 2 years prior in 1965. It's interesting she doesn't explicitly link it to the movie. Perhaps she was more enchanted by the peacefulness of the mountain paths than the Hollywood connection.
That hike leads them to the Winkler Hotel elevator. For context, the Winkler was perched on the Monksberg, the mountain that overlooks the city. There has been a lift there since 1890, but by the 60s, it was a sleek, essential way to reach the Grand Café Winkler. Shirley describes sitting up there, drinking white wine, and listening to the orchestra play Hello, Dolly. That song was at the height of its global popularity in 1967. Louis Armstrong's version had recently knocked the Beatles off the top of the charts. Hearing a Broadway hit played by an Austrian orchestra while looking down on Baroque spires really captures that mid-century cultural blend.
The journey shifts to Vienna on May 16th, and the tone changes slightly. They arrive at the Hotel Stephanie, one of Vienna's oldest hotels, founded in 1889, and she gets checked into a bridal suite. It's a moment of luxury before the rain sets in. The rain actually adds a romantic, slightly melancholic layer to her descriptions of St. Stephen's Cathedral and the Belvedere. She mentions wandering in a pouring rain with friends named Peggy and Greg, eventually retreating into a pastry shop for sweets and tea. That is the quintessential Viennese experience, seeking refuge from the weather in a coffee house.
She specifically highlights Schönbrunn Palace as a high point. In 1967, Schönbrunn was already established as the crown jewel of Austrian tourism. It served as the summer residence of the Habsburgs, with 1,441 rooms. Even in the rain, the Schönbrunn yellow of the facade stands out. Later that evening, they headed to Grinzing for music and wine. Grinzing is a famous Heuriger district on the outskirts of Vienna where winemakers serve their own new wine, accompanied by traditional Schrammelmusik, usually a trio of accordion, guitar, and violin.
But the drive from Vienna to Venice on May 18th sounds like the real endurance test of the trip. Ted, who seems to be the primary navigator or driver, warned her it would be the toughest day. We're talking about roughly 350 miles through the Alps before modern high-speed motorways were fully connected. They left at 7:30 a.m. and didn't arrive until 8 p.m. That is 12 and a half hours on the road.
It's a grueling drive, but Shirley describes the Semmering Pass as breathtaking. The Semmering is a massive piece of engineering history. The world's first standard gauge mountain railway was built there in the 1850s. The road winds through these incredible limestone peaks, and Shirley notes the transition in the landscape as they cross into Italy. She sees white roofs, mulberry trees, and peach trees replacing the dense Austrian pines. It's a sensory shift from the cool, vertical alpine world to the horizontal, sun-drenched agricultural plains of northern Italy.
They end up in Mestre, which is the mainland part of Venice. It's a practical choice. Mestre was where many of the modern hotels were being built in the 60s to accommodate the surge in tourism. Shirley describes a modern hotel with a large room and bath, which would have felt like a significant comfort after a day of mountain driving. But there's a funny, very human moment at the end of the entry. They tried to find the water, the legendary Venetian canals, but it was dark and they got lost among bridges that turned out to be over railroad tracks instead of water.
That's such a classic Mestre experience. You think you're close to the romance of the lagoon, but Mestre is a major industrial and transit hub. Those railroad tracks were part of the line heading across the Liberty Bridge into the historic city. Shirley's exhaustion is palpable by the end of the entry. She's moved through 2 countries, multiple mountain ranges, and centuries of architecture in just 4 days.
What makes these entries so special isn't just the landmarks she sees, but the small interactions, like the car full of people who asked for directions in Salzburg and turned out to be from Vienna, or taking a local named Joseph with them to find a Hummel figurine seller. It reminds us that travel in 1967 was a series of physical discoveries and face-to-face encounters, unbuffered by smartphones or GPS.
It really highlights that travel is as much about the white wine on a mountain terrace and the wet shoes in a Viennese pastry shop as it is about the grand cathedrals. Shirley Conan's journal isn't just a record of where she went, it's a record of how the world felt at a time when the distance between Salzburg and Venice was measured in long hours of mountain views and the stamina of the driver.
If you enjoyed this journey through 1960s Europe, consider sharing this episode with a friend who loves travel history.